Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Travel Request. In the late 1980s, a company in New Jersey contracted me to set up a mainframe-based email system. They had dozens of sites, large and small, all over the country. Many of the small offices were staffed by people who had absolutely no experience with computers. So after the hardware was installed, we'd send 2 of our people out to train them. The program was proceeding nicely when the company was acquired through a hostile takeover. The new owner was a tiny company that specialized in these takeovers. Their model was to buy a company, sell off the valuable assets and liquidate the rest. The guy they installed as the new CEO began by cutting expenses. One of the new rules was that all interstate travel had to be approved in advance by 2 levels of management. People were leaving in droves, some voluntarily, but a lot were called in on a Friday, given their last paycheck and escorted to the door. Among them were those people who did remote email setup. They were in Chicago running a training seminar when they got the axe. One day I got a request from this new CEO's admin, requesting that I give him and his staff of henchmen access to our email. We fast-tracked the installation of the hardware and I set up their user IDs. All that was left was for someone to show them how to use it. The only one left qualified to do that was my office mate, who I had trained to take over the system when my contract ended. But our manager had resigned and her manager had been let go in one of the purges. According to the org chart, we now reported to the CIO, the only C-level left from the old company. He knew his days were numbered, so he wasn't particularly motivated. My office mate filled out the travel request form and sent it to the CIO for approval. He spent about a week carefully considering it, weighed the alternatives and finally decided that this trip was necessary. He approved it and sent it across the river to his boss, the new CEO. Another week went by and the CEO's admin called me, wanting to know when someone would set up the email. I'll have to check with the guy who does that. Let me put him on the speakerphone. Yes ma'am, I have the request. I will come to your office as soon as your boss approves the travel request. What travel request? Per his orders, all interstate travel must be approved by 2 levels of management. I report to the CIO and he reports to your boss. You don't need a travel request to come into the city. Sorry ma'am, I live and work in New Jersey. Your office is in New York. Those are 2 different states. The rules issued by your boss specifically say that without prior approval, travel expenses will not be reimbursed. From where I live, I will have to park my car at the train station, take the train into the city, then a subway uptown to your office. There is no way I'm going to shell out that money until I know I will be reimbursed. As soon as I get approval, I will call you to schedule the trip. Have a nice day. It was almost 3 weeks until the CEO finally got around to approving the $20 travel request. The next story is called Do What You Are Hired For. 2 years ago, when I worked for tech support, I had been hired to respond to people who had errors with our website. I had gotten taught how to do everything, so if someone called off sick, I could work the position, so we were never understaffed. My manager at the time was as graceful as an angel. He would never raise his tone to little things, and he retired 7 months after I was employed. The new boss, however, was another story. One time, she had fired one of my coworkers for getting the wrong cake for her birthday. But I was never the one who got in trouble, as I wasn't causing any issues until I started working in a different position. What are you doing? I'm covering someone's shift. She cut me off. You work as tech support. There are people waiting. Yes, but the shift I'm covering is more important than tech support. She cut me off again. Do the job you were hired for. Go to the front and do your job. As you wish. I walked to the front desk and do exactly as I was asked. I helped everyone there, and when I was done, I sat there doing nothing as I was doing my job, helping with tech issues. About an hour or so later, my boss burst into the room, fuming. What are you doing? Well, you see, I'm doing my job. I was hired for tech support, so I work as tech support. But there are issues at the back. Come on, help us. I am sorry, I need to do the job I was hired for, so I can't help you. I smirk. The following day she let me cover someone else's shift and she worked for tech support. The last story is called If You Don't Like It. I used to work for a company that had a weird work culture. Everyone, including CEO, directors and the owner, worked way too much. Some would even proudly say that they could only sleep after drinking, because they have so much work they can't tune off. I was working 12 hours a day, plus commute, all without overtime, while being paid less than the market average for 8 hours. I was dumb. I loved what I did. The company has a big name in my country, so it helped build my curriculum and I had the chance of tackling very interesting projects. So I saw it as a stepping stone to better jobs. About 8 months in though, I started to break. I had stopped exercising and gained weight. My mental health was taking a big dive. And I would wake up at 4 AM thinking about things I wasn't able to finish, and then I couldn't fall back asleep. So I handed in my resignation. The CEO, who I had a good work relationship with, called me in to ask what was going on. My director was present. I was honest. He asked what they could do to keep me on the team. I said we desperately needed more people in our department. My director nodded, and I had to start working 1 hour later so I could at least go for a walk every morning. He agreed with both of those things, said that they were already working on the budget to get 2 more people to our department, and he'd asked for HR to post the openings. My director had a vacation planned, and during that couple of weeks I got to work 1 hour later, got stinky eyes from my coworkers, but overall started to feel better. Interviews happened during that time, and by the end of the 2 weeks we had 2 new members for our team. Then, on the 3rd week, when my director is back, we are all called into a meeting about 2 big projects that will require every hand on deck. The company was preparing for an IPO and we had to work on it. On the 2nd day of the week, the director calls me for a chat and says I can't be getting in late. I said I wasn't late. My hours were changed to start later, as we discussed with the CEO. She says that I can start at a different time than everyone else and that everything was too busy for it anyway. I either accepted or I quit. I was sure she felt she could spare me, now that we had 2 new members. Or that I wouldn't want to leave, because having helped organize an IPO is great for your resume. But it was not worth it to me. So I quit. She was surprised. Notice in my country is usually a month, unless the employer asked you not to. They'd still pay, but if you're angry or whatever, you wouldn't have time to steal information or cause damage. I get to work the next day and find out one of the new hires had also quit, too much work for her. I see my boss calling HR and asking them to cancel the email they had talked about earlier while throwing glances at me. I'm sure she was going to ask me not to show up anymore. But with one person leaving, it would be harder to handle everything. I keep working as usual, don't want to damage my professional image. They find someone to replace me that week, since they still had resumes from the previous cycle. Then the second previously hired person quits. The replacement quit. Then the second replacement showed up. I wasn't allowed to train him, in case the first one quit because of something bad I said. But this guy broke a record and gave up after the very first day, or before the end of my 3rd week of notice. That week I had gone for a great interview for another company. Yay, lunch hour, and I believe they called my company for reference. HR must have told my director, since she'd suddenly started acting friendly to me and would stop my coworkers whenever they made snarky remarks about me leaving. On the first day of my 4th week, the director calls me and said maybe we were both too harsh in our decisions. That she is willing to allow me to get to work 30 minutes later if I cut my lunch hour by 30 minutes. And she is fine ignoring my quitting, since it was clearly a decision made by impulse. I said I would consider staying if she matched my offer from the other company plus 10%. And if she went back to the previously agreed starting work 1 hour later. And I would have to have everything in writing before the end of the day, since I wouldn't want to screw the other company over. She said I was doing her dirty. In better terms. Something hurting the company. No loyalty. Think of your future. After everything we have done for you. You are wasting an opportunity. You aren't being professional. Why would you even think of quitting? When she said that last bit, I smiled and said it was her idea after all. That we had a deal I was willing to uphold, despite everything bad that working there had. But she said the deal was off, and if I didn't like it, I should quit. So I just complied. I didn't like it. I quit. We had a 3rd replacement for me that week. I trained her. She lasted 2 weeks. The 2 extra people for the department were never brought in, as they were trying to cut costs to better prepare for the IPO. 2 months later, the whole team was different, except the director, who was there holding strong. CEO said he was sad to see me leave, but he understood it. HR confirmed to me at my exit interview that he had been talking to the owner and directors on how to change the work culture they have been cultivating in order to retain talents better. An HR friend later told me that the owner stopped that nonsense. Oh well, I tried. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.